We're now going to look at several different ways that people think about the role of human services and what they actually do. One way is to think about levels of problem solving, which can include the micro level, which is generally the closest, smallest, say the individual, the meso level, which includes the larger, close system in which that person is living and working, and the macro level, which is the larger social source or solution to the problems. The micro level works with individuals, families, or small groups, and it helps manage emotional, social, financial, and mental challenges. It might include things like helping finding housing, counseling, job search. The meso or meso level is working with groups of people. It might mean establishing a free food pantry within a local place of worship, or establishing a health clinic to provide medical services for the uninsured, or a community budgeting or financial programs for low-income families. And then the macro level is addressing large-scale social problems, and that involves advocating to encourage state and federal governments to change the laws and policies so that vulnerable people are better served. Now, systems theory is based on the idea, which makes a lot of sense once you think of it, that people do not exist alone. We are all part of many different environments. The microsystem is the smallest system, and think of that as the people that you're going to see every day, school, work, and family. And then the exosystem is outside of you. You see people, but not every day. And then this system has a different way of talking about the mesosystem, which is how the smallest, the micro environment you live in, and the exo, the larger environment, are working together or not. So a good example of this is, does daycare match the employer's work hours? Daycare and employment are two systems in which a person's functioning, but if they don't work together, then it's the individual who's suddenly in crisis. Is the school working with the parents effectively? The child has a school environment and a home environment, but if those two are not communicating and meeting each other's needs well, it's the child who has the problem. One way to look at the systems in a person's life is to create an echo map, which is a diagram that shows all the social and personal relationships of a person. So let's look at this one. Here we have Sam and his mom. Now let's look at the relationships that they each have. So mom has a relationship with her parents, with her best friend, with work, and with a counselor. Sam has a relationship with a friend, a teacher, and a sports coach. And of course, they have the all-important relationship between them. Now, there's additional ways you can show this with the types of lines you have connecting the different people. So in this case, I've made a solid line to mean the most supportive relationships, Mom with her best friend, and Sam with his sports coach. A plain line to show the relationship between, in this case, Mom and her counselor, and Sam and his teacher, which are strong relationships, positive relationships, but not the most important. And then for me, I chose a dotted line to show relationships that are somewhat troubled or stressful. Mom has an important but stressful relationship with her parents and with her work. And Sam has a somewhat stressful relationship with his friend, who also has been a source of problems for him. Now draw an echo map for yourself, either about yourself or someone you care about, and we will reflect upon this later in this class. So let's think about what is in a help-ease environment. It means that you are understanding someone else's world. You are helping them with problem solving, maybe meeting their basic needs first, helping them make changes, and helping them find resources. Very, very important is the idea of a strength-based approach. And this approach to helping people is based on the idea that people are not a problem that they have. They are not a drug addict, a child dropping out of school, but they are a person filled with strengths and resources as well as their problems. And it's their strengths and their own resources that will enable them to solve their problem. Too often we just focus on a person's problem and forget that everyone has strengths that can be used to help solve problems. So, problem solving and the planned change model. So, helping a person or a group to solve a problem involves these basic steps: engagement, assessment, planning, implementation, evaluation, and then termination of your services. Oh, take that back. Then there's follow-up to continue to provide assistance as things change. So what is engagement? That is initially building a rapport with the person, which is a two-way avenue of respect. Assessment is identifying what the problem or problems is, and most important, helping the person identify their strengths. Planning is working together to build a plan to reach the goal or goals that the individual wants. Implementation is working together to follow that plan, to obtain the goals. Evaluation, throughout the time you are implementing these plans together, you're also assessing progress. How is this working? Well, I thought this would work, but it isn't, so let's make some changes. And follow-up, which is reaching out to check in. And all of these involve both parties, the helper and the helpee. Here's a quick picture of it, going from engagement to problem assessment, planning, action, evaluation, and follow-up. And these are not what you do. This is what you are assisting the person to do. Why do we do what we do? Why do we think it works? Well, there's a real science to the helping professions. The same way that, say, a scientist or a doctor will look at what people have done before and decide, has it worked or not, the helping professions will continually look at their own practices and try to use practices that there's evidence that they work. It answers the question, how do you know what's the best thing to do? Why are you doing things a certain way? Are there better ways to do things? So the helping professions are going to continually change as people look at and discover new things to do. And when we look next week at the history of human services, you're going to see a lot of changes based on evidence. So take a moment to think about the concept of client and helper, or even though it sounds a little awkward, it's probably better to say the helpee and the helper, because your role is to help the person help himself or herself. Never forget that. You are not fixing them, you are assisting them to help themselves. You focus on the whole person. This is not a problem. This is a person with a long history, a wide network of systems and others, filled with strengths as well as difficult problems. Being aware of the culture the person is coming to you within. Often it's easier when people share a culture. It's not required and it's not necessary, but being sensitive and respectful and learning about that culture is critical, as well as building a relationship with the person. And relationships are respectful, two-way paths. And of course, it's all based on helping the person find and use their own strengths.